Assalamu alaikum. You are listening to Dear Ustadha Raidah with your host Raidah Shah Idil. This podcast is about applying radical empathy and prophetic mercy to different life challenges. This podcast is brought to you by Seekers Guidance, the Global Islamic Seminary. At Seekers Guidance, we believe in keeping reliable Islamic knowledge free and accessible for all those who seek it. You can help us keep all our content and services free and also earn the rewards of an ongoing and worthwhile charity by making a small pledge at seekersguidance.org/donate. Even $10 a month will go a long way in helping us produce content and services and in keeping them accessible to everyone. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Welcome back to Dear Ustadha Raidah. We are up to episode 5 and the title is Must I Marry My Cousin? So this question begins with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I really like a girl from outside my family and I believe that she will be a good partner for me. My family wants me to marry my cousin. Although she is also good, I am not comfortable with her. However, there is no suitable match for my cousin if I don't go for her, and she may suffer if I say no. What do I do? Am I Islamically and morally bound to marry my cousin? Answer. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I pray this finds you well. May Allah reward you for reaching out to us. Marriage. You are not Islamically and or morally bound to marry your cousin. Please do not marry her out of guilt. Marriage is a sacred contract and you must take responsibility for who you choose to marry. You need to talk honestly with your family about how you are not comfortable with marrying your cousin. Please know that Allah is most merciful and He will not let your cousin down. I pray that she marries a kind and pious man who will cherish her. Expectation. You are probably under a lot of pressure to marry your cousin. May Allah make this easier for you. Because of this, be realistic and expect your family to be unhappy about your intention to marry outside of your family. Please do the groundwork by completing the course Marriage in Islam, Practical Guidance for Successful Marriages and reading the book before you tie the knot. If you go ahead with this, then the woman you have in mind must be strong enough to withstand the disapproval of her in-laws. That stress could break your marriage. Prayer. I encourage you to perform the prayer of need and the prayer of guidance in the last third of the night. Family ties. Please do everything in your power to maintain family ties if you choose to marry outside of your family. Bring in a respected family elder to advocate for you if need be. Barakah. If you can find it in your heart to consider marrying your cousin, then I encourage you to at least give it a shot to bring happiness to your parents' hearts. Please see Love, Marriage and Relationships in Islam, all your questions answered, and select prophetic prayers for spiritual, physical and emotional well-being by Chaplain Ibrahim Long. May Allah bring you the clarity to do what is most pleasing to Him. SubhanAllah, this is a very tricky and unfortunately not uncommon question. I can definitely sense the questioner's deep feelings of family obligation and at the same time, his own inclination towards marrying someone outside of his family. And it's tricky, right? Because again, another guessing game where I'm not sure what ethnicity the questioner is from, where he lives in at the moment, the kind of community he's in. But if I could draw a few inferences, it sounds like he comes from a family background where cousin marriages are common, acceptable, and perhaps even encouraged because cousins are known to the family. the parents know each other, obviously, there's a much higher chance of, I guess, having a positive background check, if you will. And perhaps if the questioner is living in the West, there's a strong possibility that perhaps his cousin is not living in the West. And perhaps, as is commonly the case, marrying him could be a perceived way out for her from her perhaps less than ideal financial situation. And it is a stereotype because it's actually really common, I guess, where a cousin from back home, wherever home is these days, subhanAllah, the ummah is vast, and girl cousin usually is arranged to marry a male cousin who lives somewhere in the West. Could be, London, America, Australia, who knows. And many challenges happen as a result of this. And it's not black and white. Like, for example, in my situation, I never thought that I would marry someone from back home. And like back home in my case is Malaysia. I was born in Singapore. So Singapore and Malaysia, once one united country, Malaya. But my husband he was born in Malaysia, and 5 generations ago, I believe, his ancestors came from Kerala, from South India. So I guess growing up, it's a lot of arrogance of youth. I grew up in the West, and a lot of my high school friends and we went to a private Muslim school. We were all like, "Oh, we're never gonna marry anyone from back home. Fresh off the boat. Gross," and all the things that we would use to say. Because again, the stereotype was quite negative, like, oh, the boy from back home is like really awkward and has like bad dress sense and has a funky accent and doesn't know how to behave properly in the West. Is really backward. Like, astaghfirullah, may Allah forgive us all for our youthful arrogance. And qadar Allah. It's so funny, right? All the growth points that end up happening in terms of what Allah and who Allah actually destines for us. So, and this is why, I'm actually an advocate for, like, give the cousin a chance. Like, don't completely write her or him off just because he or she is your cousin, just because he or she is from a back home, because in the end, like, souls know each other, souls recognize each other. I would not have picked up my husband, in the younger self. But subhanAllah, he's the one Allah destined for me, and I couldn't imagine being married to anyone else, alhamdulillah. But on paper, I guess he would appear to be, he's from Malaysia, he grew up in a developing country, that kind of thing. It's, it doesn't look very, I guess, praiseworthy through our very limited Western Muslim lens, right? But alhamdulillah, what I've learned so much from him is about the strength that comes with having grown up in a very strong knit Muslim community, being connected to extended family, knowing the art of speaking to the elderly, knowing how to nurture children because of prolonged exposure to little cousins, all that kind of thing. I missed out on all of that because I moved to the West when I was quite young and have a very kind of nuclear, fragmented family experience. So, but the thing is, when you're young, like what this questioner is most likely, and he's met a girl outside his family who's probably like really interesting and really attractive and is, Allahu Alam, again, I don't know much in terms of detail. So FYI, if you want to give me more information in the question, I always welcome it because that gives me more things to work with. Otherwise, I just have to kind of read between the lines and do my best to guess what the inference is, right? So perhaps, and then the questioner says, no, I really like a girl outside my family. So it definitely sounds like she's from a different ethnicity, different race, different country, and that has its own appeal. We like difference. Allah has created us all to worship Him and to get to know each other in this dunya, and there is that kind of thrill, I suppose, when you meet someone foreign. It's like, oh, interesting. And then the questioner believes that she will be a good partner for him. Now my question is, why? Why is it that he believes that this interesting non-family member will be a good partner for him? Do they share similar values, or do they share similar hobbies? Do they have a kind of common life vision? I don't know. And is he assuming that because he is expected to marry his cousin, and she is automatically not as interesting? And I guess that's the thing about being asked to marry family members. I mean, you kind of grow up with them, and they're like your little brother or sister. It's like, ugh, that's, weird, right? So they consider them as marriage material. So again, this is a discussion that ought to have happened long before. Again, prevention is always better than cure. If this young man sort of doesn't want to marry someone from within his family, perhaps he should have said that earlier on and made it clear, even though his parents will obviously be annoyed at him. He doesn't have to be rude. Like, please don't be rude to your parents. I am not in any way condoning that. I am saying, be clear. Tell them, mama, baba, mom, dad, ami, abu, I know you both want me to marry cousin so and so from back home, but I'm kind of worried that we don't have anything in common, and so on and so forth. Excuse me. So that way you actually have a conversation about this, instead of the awkward situation right now where this young man is discovering the fact that, hey, I actually don't want to marry my cousin. I want to marry someone else, but I am not interested, right? And I definitely sense a lot of feelings of guilt. Like, she may suffer if I say no. As a general rule, please do not marry anyone out of feelings of pity or guilt. That is just disrespectful. I pray that this young woman is blessed with an amazing marriage to a good man who cherishes her and who loves her and who would treat her with the respect that she deserves. And it may not be the questioner, because perhaps the questioner needs to learn for himself that marriage is a long life altering journey. It's all very character growing, and it's tough. It's beautiful and it's tough, like many things in the dunya. And I suspect that if the questioner goes ahead and wants to marry the woman of his choice, that she's going to be in for a world of pain. That's really unfair as well. So then the young man needs to then ask himself, like, is this worth the fight? This is worth the battle? Definitely pray istikhara, definitely consult trusted elders, family members who actually could be supportive of him. It's kind of like we all have to work with what we have. Like, if he knows in his family that no one marries out, and there are still families today who have a strong preference for marrying their children to cousins or second cousins or someone from a particular village, and that's just their norm. I'm not making a judgment call on that. I'm just describing that there are families who work like that. And if you're from that kind of family, accept that. Know that if you really want to break away from that, expect it's going to be tough, and you need to show excellent character, and your future spouse is going to have to be incredible and incredibly patient to withstand that. And then every family needs a trailblazer. SubhanAllah, it's not easy, but inshallah, it's goodness. It's good. It'll bring about good. And there's actually a wonderful link I came across on the Seeker Sub archive. It's titled The Ruling of First Cousin Marriages, A Balanced Perspective, answered by Dr. Asim Yusuf. So that's a pretty good read if this is relevant to you or someone you know and care about. It's tricky, it's not black and white, nothing is ever black and white, subhanAllah. But definitely to this young man, like, please don't marry your cousin out of feelings of pity or guilt, because that's just disrespectful, you know. And Allahu Alam, like, if Allah has actually destined him to do so, to marry his cousin, inshallah, Allah opens up his heart and her heart, and then he'll actually be able to see that, hey, she's actually a wonderful wife for me, and we do share many things on top of a familial bond, you know. But, you know, if Allah has written differently and he is destined to marry someone outside the family, then may God give her strength, because she's gonna need it. And again, how the young man handles it will set the tone for a lot of the marriage, right? Because imagine, you know, he comes from a family where it's like we only marry our cousins from our home, back home, and he comes along with someone very different, that it's a very instinctive response to have lots of fear. And, you know, and the easiest way to express fear, especially amongst our parents' generation, is anger, disapproval, you know. So if you're a parent and you have certain expectations for your children, and your children inevitably break them, I encourage you to stay calm, to speak from a place of love, compassion, and patience. And again, this is a discussion that needs to happen long before your son or daughter actually brings someone home. You know, I mean, again, alhamdulillah, even though I'm exhausted 90% of the time, I have a 1-year-old and a 3.5-year-old. We are nowhere near that discussion. But I would imagine that by the time your children start showing discernment and interest in the opposite gender, these are the kinds of seeds that you plant. Like, oh, you know, inshallah, one day you'll be married to a good person, and they might be like, oh, yeah, gross, and okay, not ready for that conversation, you know. But test the waters and have that discussion about your expectations. Like, and I would recommend, number one, I expect you to marry a Muslim, you know, and then it's up to you to take that discussion wherever you need to go. And if you do have a racial preference, an ethnicity preference, a wealth preference, a profession preference, I invite you to explore that and ask yourself why. So that's perhaps another discussion for another episode. So, subhanAllah, you know, this brings us to the end of episode 5. Thank you for listening. I pray this has been helpful. I look forward to sharing my thoughts about the next episode very soon, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin nabiyyin ummi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for listening. We hope that you found immense benefit in today's episode. Please take a moment to spread this benefit by sharing this podcast with your friends and family. Thank you.